So prerequisite number 2, environmental site assessment. It's a design prerequisite and it's applicable only for schools and healthcare projects. So if you're working on a project which is a school or healthcare occupancy, this prerequisite is also to be complied with in addition to the prerequisite number 1. So what is environmental site assessment? You must have heard it at least G level. It was basically at the high priority site. We discussed that there are brown fields which are high priority site. Remember in location transportation category. So how do you know if it's a brown field site? It can be declared by government, it can be declared by local voluntary cleanup programs, or you can perform an ESA, environmental site assessment, to find that if there are contaminants in the soil. So for schools and healthcare projects, we know that schools are for children and healthcare are for people which are already having some problems, like they are patients. So these are vulnerable population basically, which can easily get some catch more allergy or more problems to their health. So for these kind of projects, LEED has made it a prerequisite to conduct ESA, even if you think it's sort of brownfield site. For the prerequisite, you have to perform ESA, assess the site for any possible contamination and remediate it after the construction is over. Okay. So intent is to protect the health of vulnerable population, that is children and patients, by ensuring that the site is assessed for the environmental contamination and has been remediated. So what are the requirements to get this prerequisite? You will conduct a phase 1 environmental site assessment. You will, as per the ASTM E152705, that is the standard American Society for Testing and Material, that specifies what should be the strategy and requirement for conducting phase 1 ESA. We will look into it in a while. If phase 1 is tested positive, you will conduct a phase 2 environmental site assessment, and contaminated sites must be remediated before development, and it must meet, the remediation must meet federal, state or local standards and documented to be safe for development. Okay. So that is the requirement to get this prerequisite. Conduct a phase 1 ESA, environmental site assessment, as per ASTM E152705, and then if it is tested positive, means it has possible contamination, site might be contaminated because of its previous use, then project team is required to conduct a phase 2 environmental site assessment as per ASTM E190311. So the reference standards are different for the two phase ESA, so you need to remember these things. So this will be the flow chart for the activity for this prerequisite. You have to conduct phase 1 ESA. It is the prerequisite for schools and healthcare projects. If there are possible contamination, if your answer is no on the left, you will provide an executive summary stating the results and you will get the prerequisite. But if the answer is yes, means there are possible contaminants detected by phase 1 environmental site assessment, then you have to conduct a phase 2 environmental site assessment. If phase 2 is confirmed that the site is not contaminated, if it is not contaminated, you will provide the executive summary again and stating the results and getting the prerequisite. If there are contaminants found, you will remediate the site to local, state or federal standards, whichever is stringent. So what are the strategies that are part of phase 1 ESA, environmental site assessments? So for phase 1, what project team will do? They will hire experts, obviously environmental experts. What experts will do? They will review historical records including federal, state and local databases. Historical records can show that if the site was previously a landfill site or there was a factory once, it might appear as a flat land for now, but 30 years back it might be a factory, it might be a garage, there might be a workshop. So that will show there might be possible contaminants in the site, even if you don't see, if you see a flat land. Experts will visit the site to identify possible hazardous substances, interview people familiar with the history of the site. You can interview the neighborhood, report documenting results of analysis. So basically at this stage mostly photographs are taken, interviews are conducted, history of the site is explored to find if there could be any possible contaminants. So possible contaminants could be because of its previous use or because of the current use you might find on the site. If If the results are positive, that there are contaminants expected from the site, then project team will conduct a phase 2. So phase 2 basically means the soil and water samples will be taken from the construction site, from the project site, and will be tested in laboratory to see if there are any possible contaminants. Basically, we are talking about the contaminants in the soil, not in the building structure. You might be working on a renovation project and you have a building at hand, but basically for ESA, we are talking about the contaminants in the soil. Just like brownfield sites, we are talking about contaminants in the soil. The contaminants on the building is not addressed in this prerequisite. That will be addressed in material and resources category. So for this prerequisite, it is the soil and the water, the underground water, the water table, that has to be tested, and remediation has to take place before the development to the acceptable standards, local, federal, state, or local. The reference standards for the prerequisite is ASTM E152705 Phase 1 Environmental Site Assessment and ASTM E190311 Phase 2 Environmental Site Assessment, or as determined by federal, state, or local government. For example, Ministry of Environment in your countries may have another standard because of particular regional situation, and it is more stringent, so you will follow that. The stringent one will be followed.